Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When a retired Army vet turned golf club owner faces off against a power-hungry HOA president bent on seizing his land, a quiet suburb erupts into a legal and personal war. Lies, forged documents, and federal agents. This isn't just real estate, it's war on the green. The morning they tried to shut down my golf club, I was elbow deep in diesel grease, fixing one of the older utility carts that wouldn't start unless you begged it and hit it with a wrench. The sun was just starting to crest over the pines, and the dew still clung to the fairway like a stubborn tenant. I was in my usual work boots, sleeves rolled up, classic rock humming low from the shop speakers, and not a damn thing in the world suggested I was about to step into a legal minefield. My name's Clint Dallas. I'm 49 years old, and I don't do drama. I did logistics for the Army for 22 years. I've moved tanks through war zones, food across deserts, and generals across continents, all without losing my cool. After I got out, I invested every cent I had into building Oak Valley Retreat, a private golf and country club that sits on the edge of the Crescent Pines development. It's high-end, serene, and exclusive as hell. And the land it's built on? Mine. Every square foot. Not just the club, half of Crescent Pines, roads, buffer zones, drainage lines, utility corridors, and even the strip of manicured walking paths their kids ride scooters on. I own it. When the developers came sniffing around 10 years back, I let them lease it under ironclad terms. I kept all land rights and infrastructure control, made damn sure of it. They built the houses, formed an HOA, and that HOA's been cutting me rent checks every month ever since. I never joined it. Never had to. I don't live in Crescent Pines. I watch it. Like a landlord watches a beautiful but slightly delusional tenant who starts thinking they own the building. I kept my distance. I let them build their pickleball courts, paint mailboxes regulation beige, and hold whine and complain nights about grass height. They got discounted access to my golf club through a residential amenity agreement. Win-win. They play. I profit. And then came Karen Lassiter. She moved in 6 months ago and wormed her way into the HOA board faster than a termite in a redwood. She used to be a CPA, big on spreadsheets, low on charm. Apparently, she used Excel like a weapon and numbers like a cudgel. Next thing I know, she's president of the HOA and sending out newsletters with phrases like community standard enforcement and visual compliance initiatives. I didn't pay attention. I've seen power-hungry types before, but I didn't expect her to come after me. That morning, as I was rinsing my hands at the outdoor sink behind the pro shop, my assistant Jasmine came sprinting up with a folded envelope. "Clint," she said, breathless, "you need to see this." I took the envelope, saw the county court's seal, and immediately felt that familiar gut-tightening sensation. Inside, an official temporary injunction against Oak Valley Retreat. Immediate cease and desist of all operations due to community safety concerns. Motion filed by the Crescent Pines Community Safety Commission. The what? I blinked. There's no such body. I knew the HOA had some subcommittees. Landscaping, social events, that kind of garbage. But Community Safety Commission was not in any lease agreement I'd ever seen. The injunction accused my club of hosting non-residents after dark, contributing to unauthorized noise levels, and attracting potentially disruptive outside clientele. All phrased so politely it made my blood boil. It was dated 2 days ago. I hadn't received a single prior notice. I stormed into my office, called my attorney, and asked how the hell an injunction got filed on land I own without my knowledge. "Looks like they submitted it ex parte," he said. "No notice required. Judge issued it based on HOA's complaint." "But I'm not part of the HOA," I said. "Yeah," he replied. "That's about to become a problem." An hour later, as I was trying to process the legal insanity of it all, Jasmine burst in again, tablet in hand this time. "You need to see what they just posted in the HOA bulletin," she said. There, in full color, was a smug little banner across the Crescent Pines online newsletter. "Golf club closed permanently. Fitness center coming soon." They hadn't even waited for due process. They announced my business was dead like it was a done deal. Karen's name was all over it. Exciting redevelopment opportunities. Residents first planning. Retaking shared space. Shared space. She thought she was going to build a gym on my goddamn land. I stared at the screen for a long minute. My hands had gone still. The golf club wasn't just my business. It was mine. I built it from the ground up, mowed those greens myself when the budget was tight, ran events for veterans, taught high school kids how to play. It wasn't just turf and tees. It was a middle finger to everyone who told me I wouldn't make it after the Army. And this HOA harpy thought she could just rezone it into a rec center. My phone buzzed again. It was one of the club regulars, retired firefighter, HOA resident, confused and pissed. He got the newsletter and thought we were already closed. We're not closed, I said. We're not going anywhere. But something in me knew. This wasn't going to be just a legal headache. This was war. Karen Lassiter didn't just want power over her block. She wanted to steamroll anything outside her precious little HOA charter, even if she had to forge it into existence. And the worst part? Somehow, she just got a judge to listen. 2 days after that circus of an injunction landed in my lap, I found myself sitting in a leather chair across from my attorney, Alan, while he flipped through a printed copy of the so-called complaint filed against me. We were in his downtown office. Nice view, overpriced coffee, and the faint smell of legal firepower in the air. I wasn't in the mood for any of it. Alan leaned back and muttered, "Jesus, this is a clown show." "Yeah," I said, "the kind that sells gym memberships on other people's land." The complaint itself was laughable, filed by something called the Crescent Pines Community Safety Commission, which didn't exist in any of the HOA's own charters or bylaws. It included half a dozen resident statements accusing my club of harboring non-residents after dusk, creating noise, and one woman who said she felt unsafe seeing strangers near her backyard fence during twilight hours. No timestamps, no names, no evidence. Even more interesting? All of it was signed off by Karen Lassiter. Can a homeowners association just invent a commission and file in court? I asked. They can try, Alan replied. They shouldn't succeed. But small county judges sometimes grant temporary orders just to err on the side of caution, especially when it's phrased as a public safety concern. They literally fabricated a government-sounding board out of thin air. Oh, I agree. But welcome to civil court. It rewards paperwork over truth. Alan promised to file a motion to dissolve the injunction within 48 hours, but he also advised me, for now, to keep operations low profile. No events, no weddings, no open tournaments. The optics mattered. Meanwhile, my club was hemorrhaging revenue by the hour. Vendors were backing off, members were calling confused. And the HOA. They were acting like they'd already won. That same afternoon, someone forwarded me an internal HOA bulletin. And when I say bulletin, I mean a full-blown propaganda pamphlet. The headline read, Oak Valley closing the chapter, and below it, Karen was pictured standing near the gates to my club, like she was posing for a ribbon cutting. Her quote underneath made my skin crawl. This marks a new era for Crescent Pines, one focused on fitness, wellness, and unity. We are reclaiming this space for our residents. Reclaiming? From who? Me? The gall of this woman could power a nuclear reactor. Then came the kicker, a draft site plan for a future community fitness and wellness complex, complete with spa, yoga room, kids' splash pad, and a parking lot, right where my golf club sat. She hadn't just come after me legally. She was drawing up blueprints on a fantasy. I called Jasmine and told her to meet me at the office. I needed our title records, the HOA development agreements, the easement registry, everything. By the time she arrived, I was pacing hard enough to wear a trench in the carpet. "What's going on?" she asked, setting down a stack of file boxes. "They think they already own the place," I said. "They're publishing future construction plans. You know what that means? Insanity?" "No," I said, "intent." We combed through the documents, looking for anything that would explain how they got the injunction, and then Jasmine found it. A single page tucked into a renewal addendum from 3 years ago. A small line referencing collaborative oversight from Safety Board. It was a vague clause added in fine print, not legally binding, and never ratified. But it was enough to look legitimate in a court filing, especially if the judge didn't read too closely. I called Alan. "That safety commission," I said, "it's not real. They referenced it in one old draft, never executed. It's a ghost clause." He paused. "That's what I needed. We'll submit it with the motion." By that evening, Jasmine forwarded me another HOA document that had leaked from their board group, a draft meeting agenda. And that's when something truly insane hit me. They were planning a resident vote to dissolve my lease agreement, as if they had the power to do that. "Unreal," I muttered. Jasmine looked up. They think they can vote you out? They can vote on whatever they want, I said. Doesn't make it legal. It's like voting to outlaw gravity. That night, I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "She's going too far. Check your inbox in 5 minutes. M." I did. An email arrived from a burner address with attachments. One of them was a PDF titled HOA Board Minutes, jas unofficial, jasar draft date tal PDF. It included a transcript of an emergency board meeting where Karen said, on record, "Clint is a threat to community cohesion. If we can't buy him out, we'll bury him in safety code violations until he sells." Another line, chilling in its arrogance. "He doesn't have the patience for a siege. I do." I stared at the screen. Somebody from inside their little cabal had just crossed the line and decided to help me. "Jasmine," I said, "get the whiskey and get a lawyer on standby. We're burning daylight." When the audit reports landed on my desk, the first thing I felt was confusion. The second was a very specific kind of rage, the kind that bubbles up only when someone's been stealing from you in plain sight. We started digging 2 days after the injunction. I hired a forensic accountant named Ray Sweeney, a retired IRS agent who looked like he hadn't smiled since the Clinton administration. His idea of humor was dry as Arizona gravel, but the man knew how to follow the scent of bad money. Ray didn't waste time. Within 72 hours, he dropped 4 manila folders on my office table like they were search warrants. Jasmine and I stood over them like coroners at a crime scene. "This," he said, tapping the first folder, "is how they're laundering your unpaid rent." I opened it. Every lease agreement the HOA had ever signed with me, unpaid since March. That was 7 months' worth of usage fees for roads, storm drains, easements, and greenways, all unpaid. I did the math out loud, $1,236,000. "They didn't stop paying," Ray said. "They redirected the funds." "To where?" He handed me folder 2. Inside, transaction ledgers from the HOA's so-called Community Marketing Fund, a name that sounded innocent enough until you saw what it was really funding. $5,000 to a consulting group called Lassiter Public Strategies, LLC. Another $8,000 for community engagement dinners at upscale restaurants, all charged to HOA cards. A recurring monthly expense labeled Board Retention Package, which, from what I could tell, was just Karen writing herself checks for presidential duties. "It's not just shady," Ray said. "It's probably criminal." I sat down slowly. My club was under siege. My land was being claimed in fantasy brochures, and these lunatics were skimming hundreds of thousands to bankroll wine tastings and yoga consultant retreats with the money they owed me. I asked the only logical question. "You think IRS would be interested in this?" Ray just nodded and pulled out folder 3, already filed a 3949A. That's the IRS whistleblower form. My office went dead silent. "You didn't waste any time," I said. He gave a shrug. "I don't like thieves, Clint, and this woman, she's not just stealing. She's stupid about it." Later that day, Alan reviewed the documents and laughed like a man who hadn't had a good day in a month. "This," he said, "isn't just breach of contract. This is fraud, embezzlement, wire abuse. You can break them with this." But I wasn't done yet. I told Jasmine to help me cross-reference the HOA's original infrastructure maps with current property tax filings. I had a theory, and I was praying I was wrong. I wasn't. Whole portions of the neighborhood, sidewalks, median strips, utility corridors, were still deeded under my name. In some cases, they had never been legally transferred to the HOA because the original developers had defaulted on the purchase clauses. HOA had just assumed ownership, meaning they'd been paving, planting, installing benches, and charging residents for upkeep on land they didn't legally own, and worse, governing it. Finding residents for planting flowers on strips of grass I technically owned. You could almost hear the lawsuit groan into existence from the ether. That night, I poured a glass of bourbon, sat on my porch, and stared at the long stretch of road leading through Crescent Pines. Every single car that drove by, driving on my private infrastructure, for free. I made my decision at sunrise. By noon, my team had filed notices of intent to terminate public easements on all non-contractual use paths through my property, effective in 30 days. That included the main entry boulevard, several side roads, and 3 walking paths. I was within my rights. They were leasing that access under terms they'd violated. Legally, I could pull the plug. I also placed an order for reinforced security gates and hired 2 off-duty sheriff's deputies as private guards for the next 60 days. 1 at the main gate, 1 roaming. Karen found out about it within 4 hours. She called my office directly. "You can't be serious," she snapped. "You're blocking access to people's homes." "I'm enforcing my property rights," I said calmly. "Your board breached every term in our agreement. You stopped paying rent. You falsified documents. You tried to seize my club." "This is retaliation," she said. "You'll be hearing from our lawyers." "Great," I said. "Have them bring a check for $1.2 million when they show up." She hung up on me. Later that evening, a group of HOA board members showed up at my office, unannounced, but they weren't there to fight. They looked pale, nervous. Only 3 out of 7 showed. "We didn't sign off on this," one of them said, handing me a printed copy of the injunction Karen had filed. Their names were listed. Their signatures weren't. "She told us it was just for internal leverage," another said. "We didn't think she actually filed it." "She forged board approval," I said. They nodded. Jasmine, standing behind me, whistled low. "That's felony territory." One of them, a guy named Nate, real estate agent, rubbed his temples. "We didn't know it had gotten this far." I smiled. "Now you do." As they left, Nate lingered behind and leaned in. "You didn't hear this from me, but there's someone on the board who's been trying to keep you informed. Not all of us drink the Kool-Aid." So I was right. There was a mole, and they'd just become my most valuable ally. You'd think the board of an HOA caught red-handed stealing, forging, and trespassing would have the good sense to lay low. Maybe issue a statement, shuffle leadership, offer to pay what they owe. But not Crescent Pines. And definitely not Karen Lassiter. The week after we served notice of easement termination, she doubled down. The HOA issued a community alert that went out by email, paper mail, and even printed flyers duct taped to stop signs. In big bold font, access to community roads being illegally blocked by golf club owner. Emergency HOA meeting required. Illegally? I reread it twice, then laughed so hard I dropped my coffee on my boots. Karen was trying to paint me as the villain, some rogue businessman fencing in their idyllic suburb. Never mind the fact that she'd drained their operating budget into a marketing fund that apparently funded sushi tastings and LinkedIn ads. According to the flyer, the HOA was calling for an emergency resident meeting to vote on revoking infrastructure leases and empowering the HOA to reclaim and maintain essential roads and services. Let me translate that for you. We screwed up and now we're going to pretend we can make it all go away by voting really hard. Jasmine and I attended the meeting. We weren't invited, but we weren't trespassing either. The clubhouse where it was held sat partially on land I owned, and frankly, I wanted to see the whites of their eyes. The place was packed. Folding chairs, angry murmurs, confused seniors holding free cookies. Karen stood at the front like a Sunday preacher, arms raised, mic in hand, smiling like a rattlesnake. "Mr. Dallas," she announced, clearly spotting me, "is welcome to observe, but this meeting is for residents." I gave her a polite nod. Lovely venue. Should probably confirm the property lines, though. Gasps. Laughter. A few people actually clapped. Karen opened with a slideshow. Pie charts. Quotes from anonymous residents about feeling unsafe. Blurry nighttime photos of the golf club's parking lot, as if a Corolla with fog lights was proof of criminal intent. And then she got to the big finale. Community Fitness Vision Plan. A digitally rendered image showed the golf club's main building bulldozed, replaced by a sleek gym with glass walls, a lap pool, and an inclusive wellness zone. "Render's cute," I said. "Mind if I use your roof to build a shooting range?" More gasps. One guy dropped a cookie. Karen was undeterred. "Tonight, we vote to reclaim our community." Then came the vote. Except legally. It meant nothing. You can't vote away a signed lease. You can't reclaim land you never owned. You can't legislate your way into someone else's deed. Still, the residents raised their hands. Most went along, confused, pressured, or just tired. A few didn't. Some even walked out. Afterward, I was approached by a woman in her 60s named Linda, who lived on Cypress Loop, a cul-de-sac that, it turned out, sat entirely on one of my parcels. "She says you're going to trap us in our homes," Linda whispered. "Is that true?" "Only if you try to build a Pilates studio on my front lawn," I said with a wink. She smiled. "I didn't vote." "Good," I said. "That means you're still sane." What followed in the next 72 hours was a full-blown information war. Karen launched a barrage. press releases to local news outlets, a social media campaign called Jesus Take Back Crescent, and a slick online petition claiming the club's behavior is endangering neighborhood unity. She even hired a PR firm. I checked. They were based in Miami and had no idea they were working for a suburban HOA in Georgia. I, on the other hand, went tactical. We ran a counter-campaign, polite, clean, and full of receipts. Videos of veterans events at the club. Photos of birthday parties, school fundraisers, community barbecues, resident testimonials. We made it personal, not corporate. I wasn't a faceless LLC. I was Clint. And this wasn't just a golf course. It was a place people grew up around. Then I dropped the bomb. A full-page open letter in the local paper. Title, The Truth About Crescent Pines and Who Really Owns It. Inside, proof of HOA's unpaid obligations. A map of all parcels still deeded to me. Excerpts from Karen's falsified board filings. Screenshots of the Fantasy Fitness Center presentation. And, at the bottom, an invitation. To any resident unsure of where they stand, I invite you to speak with me directly. My doors are open. Your HOA can't say the same. That letter hit like a shotgun blast in a glass room. Karen lost her mind. She issued a formal cease and desist, claiming I was defaming the association. My lawyer framed it and hung it in his bathroom. More cracks appeared in the HOA's facade. One board member, Travis, a mild-mannered guy who ran a landscaping company, resigned publicly on Facebook, citing ethical concerns. Another, Susan, started dodging meetings entirely. By Friday, I heard from a third member, Nate, the same guy who warned me earlier, that Karen had stopped circulating official meeting minutes and was holding side conversations with her hand-picked clique. They'd gone full rogue. And then, as if summoned by fate, I got another email from my mystery ally. Subject line, you need to see this. It's the next phase. It was a forwarded message from Karen to the HOA board. Next step is securing private investment for the fitness center. I've already contacted a developer. With a little push, we can get the land reclassified. Clint won't stop us unless he's willing to blow up the neighborhood. I reread that line 3 times. Private developer, land reclassification. She was planning a hostile takeover of my business. And she was about to learn what it felt like to push a man who owned the dirt under her feet. If they wanted war, they just got one. The morning after I received that forwarded email about Karen's developer plan, I had a meeting with Alan and Ray at my office. Alan walked in with 2 coffees and a copy of the HOA's latest newsletter. Ray walked in with a flash drive and the look of a man who had just found the bottom of someone's dirty laundry basket. She's shopping around for private investors, Alan said, tossing the newsletter on my desk. Claims she has a firm lined up already. Calls it a public-private partnership. Thinks it'll make the zoning board fold. She's trying to reclassify my land, I said. Ray plugged in the flash drive. And she's going to walk straight into a federal audit doing it. He brought up a spreadsheet, one I hadn't seen before. This is a flowchart of Crescent Pines HOA's banking activities over the last 18 months, he said. The short version? They're cooked. He clicked through. Over $300,000 diverted to what they called strategic community partnerships. Shell invoices issued from 2 Florida-based LLCs, both registered to a woman named Pamela Lassiter, Karen's cousin. Payments labeled as outreach consulting, future asset planning, and my personal favorite, voter education. Then Ray pulled up an internal memo from the HOA leaked from our mystery friend. In it, Karen laid out a timeline for redevelopment of the golf club grounds, starting with applying for a conditional zoning variance through a local planning board. Only one problem, she didn't own the land. She's submitting requests based on fraudulent documentation, Alan said. That's zoning fraud, and given the tax exposure here, this is no longer a civil issue. Ray nodded. I called in a favor. My old field office with the IRS forwarded it to a joint task force. You'll want to stay available next week. That hit me like a freight train. Wait, I said. You escalated this to a federal case. Ray just sipped his coffee. We didn't start this. She did. By that afternoon, a quiet little black SUV with government plates was parked across from the Crescent Pines HOA office. 2 agents, buttoned up, no smiles, entered the building with a satchel full of subpoenas. According to Nate, who texted me 5 minutes later, Karen turned white as chalk when she saw them. The message was clear. This wasn't neighborhood politics anymore. This was federal financial crime. Later that evening, I finally met the mole. His name was Mark Vinton, a quiet guy in his early 50s who worked in civil infrastructure design. He owned a modest home on the far side of Crescent Pines, drove a 10-year-old Toyota, and had the expression of someone who hated being involved in other people's drama, but hated fraud even more. He invited me to his back porch. No small talk, no beer, just the business. I started recording board meetings when Karen began changing votes after the fact. He said, "She'd write fake minutes, claim decisions were unanimous when we hadn't even voted. When she started talking about seizing your property, I knew it wasn't just about overreach anymore. It was criminal." Mark handed me a thumb drive and a printed transcript of a voice recording. In it, Karen could be heard saying, "If we take control of the land, Clint will have no leverage. We can stall his appeal for months. The goal is to make him bleed." I didn't say anything at first, just stared at the page. Mark leaned in. "I don't want money. I want this neighborhood back." "You'll get it," I said. "You just made it possible." The next morning, we filed an emergency injunction in state court, this time from our side. The filing included evidence of forged board approvals, a sworn affidavit from Mark, financial statements showing diversion of HOA funds, screenshots of Karen's plans to file fraudulent zoning requests, and the kicker, confirmation that a federal investigation was now underway. We requested an immediate stay of all HOA operations related to the golf club, pending outcome of both the federal and civil investigations. By noon, the judge signed the order. Karen's fitness center plans, frozen. Her developer pitch, dead in the water. And to make sure the entire community saw it, I had a banner hung across the club's gates. Temporary operations paused due to fraudulent HOA actions. All lease rights remain in effect. Landowner retains control. Subtle? No. But subtlety was wasted on Crescent Pines. Residents started asking questions, loudly. People who had blindly voted with Karen now realized they'd been part of a con job. Nate told me some families were already meeting with lawyers to sue the HOA for misrepresentation. Then came the mailer. An anonymous flyer slipped into every mailbox on Cypress Loop and Birch Hollow titled, "What has your HOA really done with your money?" It laid out everything in simple, angry terms. Broken leases, fake committees, forged votes, IRS flags. The golf club they nearly lost. Karen's grip shattered overnight. And in the middle of it all, I just sat on my porch, sipping bourbon and watching the neighborhood lights blink out one by one, like little lies losing power. The day the roads closed was the day Crescent Pines remembered who really owned the ground they walked on. It started with a quiet click, electronic locks engaging on the new access control gates. Then came the sound of rolling metal as steel barriers slid across the main entry boulevard. By 8 in the morning, the entire northern entrance was blocked. A uniformed deputy leaned against his cruiser nearby, arms folded, sunglasses on, watching commuters stack up like confused cattle at a state fair. This wasn't symbolic. This was tactical. 2 more side streets were sealed by noon. Emergency access remained, of course. I wasn't a monster, but everything else shut down until further notice. The HOA had violated their lease agreements, forged legal documents, defaulted on over $1 million in infrastructure rent, and tried to seize my club. In response, I did what any responsible property owner would do. I revoked public use rights. Per contract, 30 days after notice, full enforcement began. Karen called the sheriff's department. I'd already called them first. "This is not your land," she screamed at the deputy. "You can't let him do this." "Ma'am," the deputy said, not even blinking. "He owns it. We've got the plat maps right here." She looked like a fire hydrant about to burst. Then she stormed over to my club. Or tried to. The guard at the gate asked if she had an appointment. "This is illegal," she shrieked. "No, ma'am," he replied. "This is contractual." The best part? I didn't even need to be there to enjoy it. Jasmine recorded everything from the upper balcony. We uploaded the clip to the club's social media with the caption, "When you forget who your landlord is." It went viral within hours. Inside the community, chaos bloomed. Residents woke up to find HOA emails marked urgent, blaming me for interfering with essential access. They sent PDFs filled with legalese, most of it hilariously wrong. Some folks panicked. Others started knocking on my gates, politely asking how they could get home. I let them through. One by one, residents who'd once cheered Karen's vision started asking for private access agreements. We kept a spreadsheet. By the end of the second day, 32 households had signed preliminary letters of intent to lease easement access directly from me, bypassing the HOA entirely. A soft rebellion had begun. That evening, I hosted a town hall, my own. On the driving range, set up chairs, rented a sound system, gave everyone lemonade and grilled sausage. People came out in droves. I stepped up to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "let's have a real talk. Not about bylaws or community commissions, but about who owns what and how we move forward." I laid it all out. The leases, the unpaid debt, the forged signatures, the investigation, the attempted seizure, and the fact that you can't build a fitness center on someone else's land without asking first. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I just showed them how their HOA had driven the neighborhood into legal hell. At the end, I offered them a path forward. You don't need to suffer for your board's mistakes. You want access to your homes. Let's sign new agreements. Resident by resident. Family by family. No more politics. Just contracts. The line to the signing table started immediately. Across town, Karen was still trying to play dictator. She released a furious email blast accusing me of intimidation tactics and sowing division. She even hinted at a counter lawsuit for harassment. Alan responded with a certified letter, "We welcome your legal challenge. Please bring the following to court: all financial statements, board minutes, zoning applications, and forged filings." Then he attached a check, the $1.2 million bill the HOA owed me, with a cover note. Settlement option open for 72 hours before countersuit of $5.4 million is filed. No response. But the next morning, I got a knock at the club's gate. 3 board members stood there: Nate, Susan, and a newly minted VP named Cheryl. They weren't smiling. "We want to talk," Cheryl said. We brought them in, poured them coffee, and sat down in the lounge. "Karen's gone off the rails," Nate said. "We didn't sign off on any of this." "She told us the IRS stuff was fake," Susan added. "Then she told us you fabricated the zoning documents." "Did she also tell you I forged her signature on a letter to the county?" I asked. They didn't answer. "We want to make it right," Cheryl said. "She's not returning our calls. The office is locked. We think she's lawyering up." "We're not settling," I said. "Not unless there's a full admission of wrongdoing and resignation. The HOA's finished." There was silence. Heavy. Long. Then Nate spoke. "Oh, what would happen if the HOA dissolved?" "You'd stop owing dues," I said. "But you'd need new agreements for infrastructure access and a new governance structure, something democratic, resident-led, and not built on lies." They didn't say no. That afternoon, the HOA website went down, the Facebook page went private, and Karen, she disappeared, vanished from her home. No answer at the door, mail piling up, her car gone. Later that night, someone forwarded me a screenshot. She'd deleted her LinkedIn profile. I just smiled. The road was quiet now, the lights were off. The golf club stood tall, and Crescent Pines had no queen anymore. 3 days after Karen vanished, subpoenas poured in. One hit the locked HOA office. Another landed on Susan's doorstep. She asked Alan if she needed a lawyer or a priest. The IRS had launched a full criminal probe into Crescent Pines HOA. Fraud, misappropriation, tax evasion, and forging my signature on a zoning document. Karen wasn't in hot water. She was drowning. Our countersuit was almost ready. 200 pages of audits, witness statements, and forensic timelines. Claims included breach of contract, defamation, fraudulent spending, unauthorized zoning filings, forgery, and intentional business interference. Damages, $5.4 million. Karen was personally named. Cheryl, acting president, scrambled to save herself. She called an emergency board meeting, fire Karen, accept responsibility, dissolve the HOA, and negotiate with me directly. The vote passed. That night, Cheryl handed me a formal letter requesting settlement talks and promising a transparent transition. I demanded affidavits from every board member, already drafted. We reached a binding agreement. The HOA would pay $4.7 million, dissolve within 90 days, transfer community management to the city, apologize publicly, and allow residents to negotiate access rights individually with me. Most had already signed. Karen's world collapsed fast. Accounts frozen, shell companies exposed. Developers flipped on her when federal agents arrived. Then came the indictment: wire fraud, conspiracy, falsifying records, obstruction. She was arrested barefoot in her yard by IRS agents and a grinning deputy. Jasmine framed the headline above the bar. Crescent Pines entered the largest HOA dismantling in county history. Some celebrated. Others panicked until they realized the city could handle basic services without Karen policing garden gnomes. I reopened Oak Valley Retreat at full power. Raised rates, demand doubled. And I saved one plot across from the old HOA office for something fitting. Construction began the day Crescent Pines adjourned for good. Karen's gym dream. I built it, but named it the 19th hole. Exclusive lounge, VIP terrace overlooking the course. A sign on the door. Private access only. HOA members need not apply. 6 months later, the only trace of the HOA was the scorched gravel where their office trailer once stood. The city hauled it off with no ceremony. A few residents watched silently. Someone clapped. Nobody touched Cheryl's cookies. I stood back, hands in pockets, watching the last piece of Karen's empire disappear like a bad smell. The new order was simple. Annual easement agreements directly with me. Want roads? Sign. Want club benefits? Buy a membership. Want both. Combo package. No bureaucracy. No HOA dues. No arbitrary fines. Crescent Pines became private property with clear, fair rules, not power games. The 19th hole became legend. Bourbon on the patio, jazz inside, and a plaque above the bar. In honor of misguided leadership. Cheers, Karen. Former residents laughed or toasted. Mark Sarmole became the first lifetime honorary member with free permanent access. Ray launched a fraud-hunting consulting firm and booked out instantly. Alan ran for the zoning board, won with a land rights platform. I warned him never to use my name in politics again. Karen awaited trial in federal custody. Her plea deal collapsed when she blamed everyone else. The feds had emails, recordings, forged docs, enough for 20 years. Maybe 10 with good behavior, but she wouldn't be running wellness centers anywhere except a prison yard. The media tried to turn it into a saga. The Crescent Pines HOA meltdown. They wanted interviews. I declined. The fight was over. The land had spoken. Now I spend my days at the retreat. Some nights I play golf. Some nights I just walk the fairways at dusk with a drink, enjoying the silence. No threats, no sirens. Just wind through pines and the soft thud of a ball in a cup. People think peace is a pause before the next battle. Truth is, peace comes when you win so decisively that no one dares start another. The sign at the entrance to Crescent Pines still stands. Private community rules set by the landlord so is dead, and God help the next fool who forgets it.